Dr. Katie from ScribeNote, and this is our next episode of What's Up Doc. Today I have Dr. Derek Laporte with me. Welcome, Derek.
Hi.
And we are happy to have him because he brings a really unique perspective as he is an owner of a clinic in pretty rural Ontario, I would say. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me, first of all, and excited to be here. So I graduated from OVC in Guelph in 2018. I moved back to my hometown of Sudbury, which is about 180,000 people, but quite spread out compared to a lot of the cities in southern Ontario. I bought my practice in 2021 and recently moved and expanded into a much larger facility. So we're very excited about continuing to grow for the future. And a couple of things that make my job a little bit unique, a little bit fun, a little bit hectic. We do treat exotics, so we will pretty much treat anything that is not food, venomous, or New World primate category.
Mhm.
And we also share on call for the area, so about a 1 in 10 for emergency work. And so you get some pretty fun cases and weird, tough cases and things like that when that's the role.
Yeah, I'm sure. The first thing that jumped into my mind was, wow, that is a pretty bold move jumping into ownership 3 years after starting practicing. Was that something that you always wanted to do?
Yeah, so I grew up in a very entrepreneurial family. Even going back a couple of generations of Laportes, we had entrepreneurial family members who'd go start businesses or take over and start other ones or build off of them or different things like that. And so sometimes I jokingly say that I went to the dinner table school of business and really looked up to that side of things. But I knew very young that one, I loved animals. I mean, isn't that the answer that every vet gives?
Mhm.
But number two, I wanted to be a business owner, but not behind a desk. And so that kind of combination meant that practice ownership was honestly what I wanted to do from the very beginning. And I actually tell a little bit of a funny story that maybe shows I was a little bit overconfident as a kid. But I actually shadowed my mentor now back in grade six for a day. And as I was leaving, one of the technicians, who's now actually my inventory manager, came to me and said, "One day you're going to own this place." And my response was, "That's the plan."
Wow.
Um, so it was something that was never in doubt for me. And in my case, I was also very fortunate. My mentor bought the practice because of circumstances that kind of didn't give her a whole lot of options
Mhm.
back in 1991. And she wanted to continue practicing and she wanted to still be very active, but had never loved the business side. So
Mhm.
for her, the ability to shed that part of the responsibility meant that I had someone that would support me medically while I was doing learning all of these things at the same time. So I was very lucky, and I do consider myself very fortunate to have that mentor and that kind of circumstance and everything else. So
Wow. Well, yeah, like you said, a huge responsibility, and I'm happy that you were able to kind of combine your passion for entrepreneurship with your love for animals. Obviously, we need more, I think, privately owned clinics that, to get people in the door and start buying again. What are some things maybe that you would suggest people do to prepare if they were, thinking about maybe jumping into ownership or like maybe financially, things like that? Like anything that jumps out to you that would be helpful?
yeah, I'll take the easy part on first. Um, Financially, banks will help vets out a lot. They really like vets. It's a very secure business model. They like that. And so they are pretty quick. It does get scary when the prospect of competing with corporate buyers comes into play because
Yeah.
oftentimes private buyers can't match that.
Hmm.
But there are still enough veterinarians who would love to sell, don't want to see their practices go corporate. And so those are some of the people that, that opportunity is there without necessarily having the big competition part. Um, because of the way that banks will loan to veterinarians, there isn't actually a lot that you need in advance. Obviously, having good credit and those basic things like don't ruin that stuff. But with a good business plan, they're actually very generous, and we do get good rates and things like that. So it's actually a little bit less scary than a lot of people think off the bat.
Okay.
Um, in terms of learning and developing and that sort of thing, honestly, I would say networking is very valuable.
Hmm.
Reach out to private owners because a lot of private owners are actually quite willing to talk about the process and that sort of thing, especially as well, we've become a little bit rarer in the last
Yeah.
handful of years, and so a lot of us do sort of worry, and most of the people who are still privately owned are the ones who don't necessarily want to sell to a corporate consolidator.
Hmm.
But there's a lot of very helpful podcasts, speakers, public figures that will happily talk about these topics. And when I was in my undergrad, I did go, take my accounting 101 and some of the basics that way. But I also read quite a lot. There's some really good books and references out there that actually talk about veterinary business as well. And if you remember why you're doing it is probably the most important thing because you can guide all your decisions through the why that you have, like what is your goal. And if you do that, it helps the tough days be a little bit easier.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure there is many long days for you, especially being in a rural area. You guys have some on call, like you said. How do you find, like, do you have a work-life balance? Do you find, like, being an owner, you're always on? That's always been kind of like probably the reason I never really even considered it, just because it always seemed like, you'd never not be working. So, yeah, tell me a bit about that.
Work in progress. That's what I'll kind of say.
At least you're honest. Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm not gonna say that I get to go home at 5 every day and it's all great and things like that. Some of it is setting and maintaining the boundaries.
Mhm.
So an example of something that I did for my work-life balance is that I work 4 days a week. I work a long Monday and a Thursday, so those days get very long, but I have Tuesdays off. For me, that's the day to kind of do all the stuff that I need to do for me and usually get around to golf in the summer. So I have those sorts of boundaries and I try not to be that first point of contact on a Tuesday. It's like, look, unless the place is burning down, you guys handle it. We'll figure it out. We'll go from there. And if it is burning it down, well, maybe call 911 instead of me because I can't do anything anyway.
Yeah.
And so as time has gone on, I've really been focusing on building out the way that I delegate, which admittedly, when I first started, a little bit of a micromanager, kind of wanting to have my hand in everything.
Hmm.
And that's been something that I've been very actively reining back because I have come to realize I was trying to be too much to too many people all at the same time. And so it's kind of a little bit of a disservice to everyone. And so that was a very big learning curve moment for me. And like I said, still a work in progress. I was fortunate enough to hire quite well. And so one of the things that has made a big difference was I had a new graduate come on last year who is willing to share the exotic on call and things like that. And so, more hands makes less work,
Yeah.
kind of mentality on that regard. And so there is a lot of long days, long months, long years. Last year when we moved, that's honestly a lot of last year is a bit of a blur. Um, but if if you focus on the why of what you're doing and you take those steps to create that balance, like it's going to be a long couple more years, most likely for
Hmm.
me, but I also recognize that it'll be built in a way that I can take that step back. And I've gone and like I've joined some coaching programs and things like that to also help me to achieve that kind of balance, but it takes time.
Yeah.
And It's kind of that deferred reward mentality. I'm willing to work super hard now, knowing that the benefit comes down the line.
Yeah, yeah, very, very true. Yeah, so that those are all really, really good points. I think having a good support system at the clinics, like trusting the people you work with and being able to hire them yourself, I think I'm sure helps, right? What is your team like right now?
It is about 25 people.
Wow.
We are four veterinarians, soon to be onboarding a fifth, and a couple of very interesting people that have some cool experience in their background and things like that that we were fortunate about. We have quite a few RVTs, a few VAs, few kennels, quite a large reception team as well. But at any given moment, like we are able, fortunately, to have at least a tech per doctor and then usually an extra one and an extra kennel around. Um, but we're very lucky. Like the staff that I kind of inherited when I bought the clinic was really, really great. And we've been very fortunate in sort of the recruitment process. We do have a tech program locally.
All right.
And so while the numbers aren't nearly high enough for that for that program, as far as I'm concerned, it'd be nice to see it grow. We have been quite fortunate with our recruitment from that, and so I've been very lucky. I would say that we have a fantastic team, and I couldn't do nearly as much as we accomplish without that group.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah, I think the team part of the whole thing is always a huge weight of how things go, right? Depending
yeah.
on who you've got in your corner. So that's awesome to hear. Maybe I think we'll switch gears a little bit and talk a bit
Sure.
about, working in rural practice and having exotics as something that you see. Obviously, those are two kind of separate things, but it sounds like you do some exotics on call as well.
Mhm.
Was that always something like, were you always interested in seeing exotics?
Yeah, so fortunately for me, like I said, I did get the opportunity to get to know my mentor fairly young,
Hmm.
and then when I was in vet school, I spent a lot of time with her, and she has seen exotics for 35 years or so.
Wow, yeah.
And so she started it right away when she came up. She was one of the only ones who would actually work with exotics, and it was fun. Like I would show up, it wouldn't be the same old every day. Every time I showed up, I didn't know what was going to be behind the door of the next appointment room. And even now, I've known her quite well for a very long time, and she'll just drop some random tidbit of a side story, and it just completely catches me off guard. Where it's like, you did what? Things like kangaroo dentals,
Wow.
and fun random stuff like that. And so it was very fun. The other thing that I was pretty impressed by actually is when I came on board, and our client base who'd known her for as long as they had started seeing me, I would get thanked for being willing
Yeah.
to try. And so like that was something that actually kind of was a bit of a shock. Like I was, the imposter syndrome in first
Hmm.
year out kind of thing, expecting people to only want the experienced vet. And they're going, oh no, we're so happy that you're going to learn this. Like now we know there's going to be somebody available in the
Yeah.
years to come, sort of thing. And so that was very rewarding. And you do get into some funny situations where it's like, okay, there isn't a textbook answer for this. There isn't a report. There isn't a study. We're going to do the best we can based on the species that we have that information on,
Mhm.
and you give it a try. And so, like, I know a lot of people find it a little bit scary because they feel that they should have the same level of knowledge and comfort with every single species that comes through the door.
Mhm.
But I've had people drive 8 hours to see me because there isn't someone closer to them.
Wow.
And I find that rough. Like, it's actually one of the things where I'm very happy about sort of the advancements in telemedicine is because at
Yeah.
least there's somebody that can help that person in that area.
Hmm.
Um, and I try to convince every vet that I talk to, at least dabble a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, as we were chatting about before, like I'll give out my phone number and email very quickly and be like, please, if you're willing to see something, like give me a shout and I'll talk you through it. because especially in some of the more rural areas than us, even, um, I will take a compassionate vet with a VIN subscription over the owner trying to Dr. Google at home because they don't have an option.
Yeah.
And so it is fun. I definitely get a lot of cool stories. And when when I get together with other vets, sometimes those stories come out, and definitely have some fun parts to that. And the other kind of cool thing for me is that even in the last 7 years, like we've seen how much more people are willing to do for cats and dogs nowadays.
Hmm.
We're seeing that follow through a little bit more in the exotics again.
Oh, interesting.
And so, with somebody, 30 years ago, I was a farm dog.
Yeah.
Now people are looking at, the young couple is looking at the dog as a starter child.
Yep.
And so we see that bond that's that much stronger.
Hmm.
But then I've seen people who will do just as much for a hamster or a bearded dragon.
Yeah.
And so seeing that bond, that human animal bond form between what a lot of people would consider non-traditional species,
Hmm.
and their human is very cool. And so that was part of what was fun about it for me. So,
Yeah, really, really awesome. I think it's so nice when clinics will take it on. And obviously, you do need a little bit of a different, drug repertoire, repertoire, to have a bit of staff that can handle the exotics
mhm,
properly. Like, there is definitely some small barriers to it, but really
yeah,
nice to have people willing to share their resources and their knowledge. Um, I did dabble in exotics a little bit. So my first job that I ever worked at, we saw, all things. So I've seen snakes and bearded dragons and bunnies and rats and all of that. And then I did backyard poultry for a bit. And so that was really unique as well. The clinic I'm at currently is just small animals, so dogs and cats, but I definitely feel that kind of imposter syndrome that you talked about, right?
mhm,
Like you want to be able to provide the best medicine, and sometimes it feels like that's really hard when it's a species you don't see as often. So I,
mhm.
I definitely get that kind of nerve racking part of it that people I
Yeah.
think maybe makes them a little bit more hesitant to try. But considering that the owners are quite, thankful and they don't really have too many options, it's so nice to be able to offer it. So well done.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I'll just kind of throw in one sort of tidbit based on what you said there. And for me, it comes down a lot to informed consent.
Hmm.
So sometimes informed consent involves our own limitations.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, this is where actually the rural and the exotic side kind of overlap quite a lot. Because on the exotic side, there's a lot of things that I've done for the first time, and it's the only time I've done it, and it might take me another 15 years to run across it again.
Right.
Um, the first hedgehog spay I did, I haven't done one since. You know,
Wow.
the first bearded dragon spay I did, haven't done one of those since. And so, but the flip of it was the first time I had a tendon repair in a dog. I hadn't done that either, but the owners weren't able or willing to refer. I don't quite recall which. So I called somebody that I'm fortunate enough to have the cell number of, and we chatted through the surgery. And I went, "Look, is this something that I can reasonably take a shot at?" And I did, and the dog did great. But the informed consent part of that was, look, I'm recommending you go to a surgeon. I'm recommending you go to that type of facility. And we do the same thing with the exotics too. Like there are
Hmm.
some specialists available in Ontario. And so if it's something that's out of my typical realm, I will offer that. But we are far enough north that a lot of people either won't or can't.
Hmm.
And part of my informed consent process is, look, this is the first time I've done this. It should be within my skill set, but that's the limitation. And if you accept that, then okay, let's go forward. And so I think when we're very clear with clients because I think a lot of people, one of the things is they expect that of themselves, and
Mhm.
then their assumption is that the client expects perfection
Right.
as well. But if we're just very clear about that, it's a little bit of okay. There's a bit of gamble here, but I can say that I have made mistakes, but I think I've done a lot more good for exotics than I've done harm
Yeah. Yeah.
by a long shot. So,
Yeah, really, really good point. And I think that all comes down to communicating and
mhm.
partnering with your clients, right? And not just like throwing things at them, just really like building that relationship and being
Yeah,
able to be honest and open. And I think you probably get a lot less negative feedback and because you set them up to be aware of what the issues are, so another really important point. And I guess along those lines, so you're on call schedule, you're doing surgery middle of the night, like what's that like?
um, fun, scary, tiring, stressful. I'd miss it if it was gone. If we did have an emerge hospital, I wouldn't be that upset, but I might locum there. All kinds of things. It kind of conflicted as I said all of that.
Yeah.
And so, like I've always had a slant toward surgery. When we built this facility, it's got two surgery suites. One's massive, the other one is like a typical GP size. So it was very much built in reflection of what I enjoy.
Yeah.
And so I've always had a lot of fun with that part. And especially in my first few years, I had a good friend and somebody that I would also consider a mentor. We were talking about, oh, I'm scared my first GDV is going to be at 2 in the morning, and nobody's going to pick up the phone if I call in a panic. Um, and we talked about it, and it's like, okay, so on some of those really high risk cases, and she goes, you prepare the owner really well, and um, either you're the hero or the expected happened.
Yeah.
And so that was a bit of a mindset that I very much hold on to in some of those, like, okay, we're well outside of my typical depth kind of cases. And I still use this line every once in a while. At 3 in the morning, you're the best vet available. When you're
Or
this
the
far north.
only yeah.
Well, one of one is still one.
Yeah.
Uh, and so like it is stressful. It can be hard on the team sometimes, but you do your best for the patient. And like I said, sometimes that's where the coolest stories come out of when you pull something off that, last week wasn't in your knowledge base.
Right.
And um, so I personally enjoy it. Like I said, if Sudbury is getting big enough that I know that there has been some sniffing around at the possibility of an emerge hospital at some point,
Hmm.
and honestly, if it did happen, I would probably consider doing a locum shift once in a blue moon just to keep my toes in that water. But I do also think it helped me become a much better vet
Yep.
because you do see the hard cases, you do see the weird cases, and it's forced me to be very rounded as a veterinarian, where I
Hmm.
can kind of I can take on a decent amount in most aspects of veterinary medicine. And so I'm glad that I came up in a region like this where every once in a while you're pushed out of your depth and you figure it out. And
Hmm.
you don't get the option to stay in your comfort zone as
Yeah.
often. So, like I said, I do think it made me a better, more rounded vet, and I'm glad that I did it. And then there's weeks like this one where we were on call last weekend, and I've been tired all week
Yeah.
trying to catch up from it. So
Yeah, well, it sounds like, it's super impressive what you can do, and what you're willing to tackle. And I'm sure owners appreciate it a lot, like, being available to, because what is the other alternative? Like you said, like there isn't one. So those pets
mhm.
that you aren't there to help would likely die otherwise, right? Like, so, I think it's really quite brave, obviously, to jump into so many things and to put yourself in those stressful situations. Like there's something to be said for that, right? Like not everyone will do that. So again, like big kudos to you there.
Thank you. I like I said, I've always found it fun.
Yeah.
Um, was a competitive athlete growing up, and so the trial by fire approach thankfully works for me. But like you identified, it's not for everyone, and there's fantastic vets doing wonderful things for animals in, shall we say, much more controlled circumstances.
Yeah.
And that's great too. And
Hmm.
it is kind of a what I kind of look at my career and I see is that it shows that there's a lot of paths available. I seem
Hmm.
to have chosen to try to take all of them at once, which maybe was a little bit um, ambitious at times. But it is fun. I have no idea what next week might look like at any given moment, and I enjoy that. But I also fully know it's not for everyone.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things I think with this career path is like there are just so many ways you can use your DVM. I actually recently heard a really cool quote. The DVM is not your sorry, not your destination, it's your ticket. And I was like, wow, yeah, that's really true. So yeah, you've definitely proven that. Your ticket to being able to do anything that you want to under the sun within the field. And I think we could probably tell that because you said you were going to own a clinic when you were in sixth grade. So seems about right. Seems like you kind of trended along those same lines there. But
Yep.
yeah, that's I guess another big thing would be the mentorship, and I know that you've
Mhm.
provided quite a lot of mentorship yourself. So can you tell me a bit about that, like working with the next generation, what that's been like?
Yeah, it's been very cool because I've worked a fair amount with students, and I do really enjoy when students come up to see us because I'm always kind of hoping I can take away the fear of exotics, and
Yeah.
so I enjoy teaching. I also find students keep us honest. Um, Sometimes they ask you a question, you're like, oh, I should know that. Uh, Let me look into that for you and get back to you. And they're constantly being trained on the newest, latest evidence. Where as much as we all try to keep up, there's a lot of journals, a lot of changes, and it's
Mhm.
perpetual and so they help keep you up to date. Um, but I've also worked with quite a few people from various countries, various training backgrounds. And the funny part is every single like formal mentorship has had its own challenges. And the way that the students are coming from OVC, for example, at the moment, like I can say our most recent new graduate, she came out way more prepared medically than I was.
Ariella, awesome.
Um, and so that was fantastic. And but the surgery side, it's an experiential thing, and it
Hmm.
takes some more time, and that's okay too. And it was one of those things that I kind of noticed as a bit of a change. I helped mentor one lovely gentleman who was from India, and it had been a while since he worked for a brief period in India, and then they came over. And he basically said to me, treat me like I know nothing, because even if I know it, I want to make sure I learned it correctly. And so worked very hard. But it was a very different mentorship approach. And so I was very fortunate that I had a fantastic exotic and general medicine mentor, but I also got lucky to come across a few people who were very strong differently in the business sense. And on the business side, like, I had my dad and, my family to lean on. And
Hmm.
so you kind of have mentors for different parts.
Right.
And even now, I can say like my communication style is a lot of my own personality coming through, but then tidbits from every vet that I shadowed or worked with along the way, where every once in a while I'll say a particular phrase and realize, oh, that one was from my externship. Um, you know, 7 years, 8 years ago now.
Hmm.
And so the big one that I found for mentorship on both sides is finding the people that fit with you, but then can also push.
Yeah.
So, some people need a little bit more support. Some people need a little bit more trial by fire, or
Hmm.
they'll just kind of hang back. And so it is kind of interesting realizing that every single person through the door has their own personality, their own background, their own experiences, their own confidences, competences, and everything else,
Mhm.
and trying to kind of blend the way that I typically teach to fit them best. And it is a lot of fun. Like I said, they keep you honest. And then for people looking for mentorship is reach out, network, talk to a lot of people, um, and then go with the one that, you jive with, for lack of a better term, the one that you feel like there's a good fit. And that doesn't mean that I'm the right mentor for everybody. Definitely not the case.
Mhm.
Um, from doing it when I was fairly early in the field, that was a little bit scary because it
Mhm.
still felt like I was learning a lot. One of the things that I never shied away from though was telling them, I don't know. And I did that with my clients as well, where it's like, hey, I don't know. I'm going to go look this up, or I'm going to go ask my mentor. I think we both could benefit from her experience, was a phrase I would use.
Yeah.
And with the new grads, it's like, yeah, I'm not sure either. Let's have a look on Vin. Let's pull out a textbook. Let's go chat with my mentor. Let's go higher up the experience chain. And so just being authentic, being me or being you with those people is probably the most important thing, and showing them that it's a growing curve, it's a learning curve, and it's not about having every answer, it's
Mhm.
about working through the problem.
Yep, yep. What a great
So,
perspective. I think, because a lot of people in this field are more, I need to know all the answers. I need, like that, it almost becomes like this fear of like being honest that like, maybe this is a little bit different than something I've seen before. But you're right. I think the authenticity around it is what makes it like, if you're honest with your clients and you're honest with yourself and the people you're teaching, then maybe we'll have less imposter syndrome because not everyone is pretending to know everything, right? Like
mhm.
I think it's a really refreshing to hear that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I'll go on just a little bit more, and I'll kind of say the thing that people talk loudest about is usually the thing they're most confident in.
Hmm.
So even especially when, like, thinking about students, that the student who talks the most in the derm lecture, that's probably the topic they're very confident about. Whereas
Hmm.
you might be more confident in surgery, but you're sitting there going, well, they're smarter and better than me because they know
Yeah.
more about this topic. Where that person goes quiet in surgery, and so like realizing that we all have different strengths, weaknesses, and everything else, and the people talking the loudest that you're often comparing yourself to are actually, that's their particular area where they are very confident. And so having, when I first joined practice, the two vets that were at Lasalle Animal Clinic had been there since 91 and or 1990 and 1992. Um, I was comparing myself against them. That
Hmm.
wasn't a fair comparison.
No, definitely not.
um, and so what I tell people when I'm talking to the new technicians or the new grads, it's don't compare to our lead technician. Compare
Hmm.
to you last week.
Yep.
If you're getting better each day, each week, you're learning something new, you're getting a little bit faster, better, more efficient at that skill, then that's the important part. And everybody's going to have a different growth rate, different growth pattern,
Hmm.
different things that come easier, more difficult. And so I like I said, I kind of had to give myself the wake up call of comparing myself to people who had been doing it as long and as well as they had
Hmm.
wasn't fair.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I always hear the saying that's like comparison is the thief of joy. Like it really just
yeah.
takes away every good thing that you've ever done if you go and compare yourself to someone who's been doing it for three times as long and it so yeah, I think that's a really, really good way to look at it. And I think, your perspective is like I said, really refreshing and I think will help a lot of people. Like, we've got new grads coming out right now and starting because it's May. And so yeah, probably a really good thing for them to hear as they get their feet wet in the very varied practice that is veterinary
Mhm.
medicine. Like literally every day is different. I still feel like after this many years, I learned something new probably every at least couple days, if not daily, something that doesn't present like it should or something that you haven't seen before. And that phone a friend mentality, like, not competing with people, but like building each other up, I think is the way that we should really try and be more collaborative and less, less negative towards our colleagues.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I will say it's something that very lucky about being in Sudbury.
Hmm.
Um, Sudbury, like everywhere, the pandemic was absolutely crazy. Nobody could get anybody in, and just there was far too much work for anybody to even humanly try to pull off.
Yeah.
But the Sudbury community has always been pretty close knit, and like there are so many phone calls even between practices and to different individuals, and like I've been on both the receiving and the help end of the phone call.
Hmm.
Like we're all in this together in the
Hmm.
veterinary field. Right now, demand is so sky high. There's, in my opinion, in a lot of Ontario in particular, there's no such thing as competition. There's more than we can reasonably do.
Hmm.
um, and so the more that we help each other out, the more that we raise everybody, the better we all are. And at the end of the day, you know, maybe that person who's working down the street in the other practice just happened to see a case that was similar to the one that you're stumped on. You don't know, and so sometimes just bouncing ideas off of somebody. And it was even something kind of entertaining in my mentorship relationship with my mentor when I realized it was that at first I would go to her, I would ask all sorts of questions and basically want her to tell me like, what do I do?
Hmm.
And then there was one day where I sort of realized that I went and I was talking to her and I realized I just wanted to say it out loud and kind of just as much as anything, just kind of get the thumbs up. They're like,
Yeah.
yeah, you're on the right page. And having that happen a couple of times with people that I've been mentoring a little bit more is a really cool moment where you're like, oh, they don't actually have a question at the end of this. This is awesome. um, but yeah, like I've had people call me, I've called them on the exotics. I mean, we do get a fair number of calls, but even on the cat dog side, where you just get somebody who's looking for a sounding board
Hmm.
and like I said, the more we support each other, it's a tough field. It's not easy. Let's all be
Hmm.
kind to each other and support each other rather than try to tear anyone down.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Amazing. I totally agree. I'm with you there. I really appreciate all your tidbits of knowledge and well, more like a wealth of knowledge. It seems like you've done so much in a really short career. So pretty incredible if you ask me. It sounds like you are certainly a really good person to know if you have questions about anything. And so maybe I'll reach out again if I have any exotics questions, if we start seeing a bit more of them, or ownership questions, etc. So thanks again, Dr. Laporte. And I think we'll probably wrap it up there.
Well, I'll actually just kind of say feel free to reach out anytime. And that applies to both you and anyone who might be listening. I am happy to help wherever I can. And, um, you know, what I would probably kind of end on is, if we're trying our best, we're doing what we can. That's all anyone can reasonably expect from us. And if we're honest with ourselves and with our clients and everything else, I mean, I think there's a lot of good that we can be doing and that a lot of us are doing.
Mhm.
Um, but I think we can be a little less hard on ourselves sometimes
Yeah.
in that process and less hard on each other and just remember that it's a somehow both a massive and very small community all at the same time.
Hmm.
And yeah, so if there's anybody that I can help out, feel free to reach out to us, and happy to do what I can. And thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And we'll link Dr. Laporte's email at the bottom of our YouTube. And we'll catch you guys next time on What's Up Doc.